We are now live on YouTube.
Good afternoon, Marvis.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Just checking my mic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Marvis. Hi, Marvis. This is David Soderman.
Hi, David. Thank you. We can hear
You're welcome.
you loud and
Okay.
clear. Thanks.
All right.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Member Gomez. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Good afternoon, everyone.
We'll start in just a few minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
Happy Meeting Friday. I have more meetings on Fridays. Councilmember Shu, how many times have I seen you today? Good morning, Member Gomez.
This is only second time. Only it was about 3 hours early this morning.
By the way, your comments were exceptional today, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
I couldn't have said it better.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. We'll be starting in like 2 minutes, right?
Yes, ma'am.
How are you, Member Consuelo Martinez? ¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien, how are you all?
Pretty good, pretty good.
You look nice.
Today is a long day, so whenever I have long days, yeah, wear lipstick. How are you, Steven?
I'm doing well, Nora. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Mr. Medina?
Nora, you just gave away our secret about wearing lipstick.
Oh.
I should have worn more today.
You should have. Oh, is something going on with the audio? All right, can everybody hear me there? It sounds okay, right? Okay.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Fantastic. So good afternoon, everyone. I welcome everyone to the May 21st, 2021 meeting of the San Diego County Air Pollution Control District Governing Board. I am now going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that all members are participating via teleconference. As such, all votes will be taken by roll call vote. With that, Member Birkbeck Garcia,
Here.
Member Bush,
Here.
Member Elo Rivera, Member Fletcher, Member Gomez,
Here.
Member Martinez,
Here.
Member Medina,
Here.
Member Shu,
Here.
Member Whitburn,
Here.
Vice Chair Sanchez.
Sanchez present.
Thank you, Chair Vargas.
Vargas present.
Thank you.
All right. Next item is I'd like to remind board members to please turn on your cameras and everyone to mute your microphone. If you are not speaking, remember to raise your hand or use the raise hand feature and I will then recognize you. So next on our agenda is public communication. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to the board on any subject matter within the board's jurisdiction, but not an item on today's agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any members of the public that wish to address the board?
Yes, Madam Chair. We have 2 members of the public that wish to address the board under public communication. I would ask any members of the public that have requested on a specific item listed on today's agenda to please hang up and call back when the board begins discussion on that item. For the non-agenda public speakers, I will be calling you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. You will hear a notification that your call has been unmuted. At that time, you will need to press *6 to unmute your phone. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the audio record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the board. Please self-regulate your time and conclude your comments when your time has ended. Our first caller is 7614. I would ask that you unmute yourself at this time by pressing *6 and begin by stating your name for the record.
My name is Yitka Perez.
Me llamo Jessica Para.
And I will begin by saying hello, Supervisors Vargas and esteemed members of the board. My name is Yitka Perez, and I'm a member of SEIU Local 221. I've worked at the county as an air pollution control aide for 17 and a half years. I've been active in my union since approximately 2006.
Give me a second. Give me 1 minute. Can you, Madam Clerk, can you hold off on, we're going to go ahead and redo that again. First things first, we forgot to mention, a la intérprete le puedo pedir por favor que está usted creo que mal en el lugar del Zoom. No está en el Zoom apropiado y cuando está hablando todos los estamos oyendo. Entonces creo que hay un problema con la traducción. No sé cómo podemos hacer eso para que la gente no oiga, porque cuando está hablando la persona, está hablando usted al mismo tiempo. Así que hay un problema que sucedió. So we're going to go ahead and hold off. I actually forgot to mention that we had an interpreter today available as promised. But I think the system is not working. So whoever is the technology whiz at APCD, could you help us out with that? And then I'll turn it over to the clerk so we can start over with our public comment.
I will mute myself and wait for further instructions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, and I apologize for that. I just want to make sure you have a lot of wonderful things to say, and I want to be respectful of your time, and I want to do this right. So can somebody from APCD help me with the interpretation piece of this? I'm not really sure what's happening.
Yes, and I will also ask the caller to mute your live stream while you're speaking so that we don't pick up the simultaneous interpretation.
All right, so are we good to go?
We should be. Let's try again.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and try it again, Madam Clerk, and let's give her her full time again, please.
Thank you, caller. You may begin by stating your name for the record.
My name is Yitka Perez, and hello, Supervisors Vargas and esteemed members of the board. I am a member of SEIU Local 221, and I've worked at the county as an air pollution control aide for 17 and a half years. I've been active in my union since approximately 2006. I am calling in today to reinforce the wishes for greater transparency and urge you to support frontline workers at APCD. And please listen to our input when filling these important positions for management. Our new management team must do everything in their power to reverse decades of an unhealthy workplace culture. Our new management team must improve the workplace culture to one which is more inclusive. We need leadership which values each individual's knowledge that they bring and contributions and allows them to practice their skills. We need leadership that actively addresses divides within the department to work towards achieving common goals. We need leadership who values our contributions and actively fights against divides within the department. We need a management that allows issues and concerns to be aired openly, so solutions are discussed without personalization or retaliation, and with an emphasis on honesty, the truth, and a code of ethics. As a longtime employee of APCD, I've seen firsthand how a lack of mobility for certain groups within APCD has held back both individual workers and the overall mission of APCD. For too many, there are no steps of advancement to other positions. There's little exposure or introduction to different work in some jobs that could lead to advancement, specifically in the more traditionally women's job areas. The men can more easily advance in steps as they're more often filling positions that are tracked with advancement levels. Everyone on this board has an opportunity to make sure that employees can advance in their knowledge, their contribution to APCD, and their career path over the years so that the community benefits from employees with a breadth of knowledge in the organization. On behalf of my coworkers, I urge you to please prioritize transparency and community input as well throughout the process of creating the management. Please do all that you can to uphold the stated values of Air Pollution Control District and the County of San Diego. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
I've concluded.
Thank you. Our next caller is 8312. 8312, and I would ask that you unmute yourself at this time by pressing *6 and begin by stating your name for the record.
Hello? Hello,
Hi.
Supervisors Vargas and Fletcher, and esteemed members of the board. My name is Michelle Frigo, and I'm a member of SEIU Local 221. I've worked at the county for 19 years, well, actually at the Air District for 19 years, and the county for about 21 years. I work at APCD as an air quality inspector and have been a steward in my union for about a year. I'm here today to advocate for myself, my coworkers, and a fair and transparent hiring process for the new leaders of APCD. For too many years, the county's policy has been to withhold information from the employees and the public. We think it is better if the public has more information and prioritizes input from all stakeholders, including county, primarily district staff. As you know, interim Director Ryder and Deputy Director Garza will be retiring this summer.
We seem to have lost our caller. We can come back to her when she joins us.
Are there any other members of the public?
No, just those two.
Okay, fantastic, Madam Clerk. Thank you. Are there any members of the board who have comments that are not on today's agenda? All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move forward. The first item up is our approval of our May 7th, 2021 minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Vice Chair Sanchez.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Motion by Vice Chair Sanchez and a second by Member Bush. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Member Birkbeck Garcia?
Aye.
Member Bush?
Yes.
Member Elo Rivera?
Yes.
Member Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
Member Gomez?
Yes.
Member Martinez?
Yes.
Member Medina?
Yes.
Member Shu?
Yes.
Member Whitburn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Sanchez?
Sanchez, yes.
Chair Vargas?
Vargas, yes.
Thank you. That motion passes with all board members being present and voting aye.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, are there, let's see.
Hello?
Yes. Oh, did you come back? There you are.
I submitted a public comment and I was not included, so I just wanted to know what happened.
Madam
I
Clerk?
have you marked down for item 1 on your request to
Okay.
speak form. Were you looking to speak to item 1 or on a non-agenda comment?
It was a non-agenda comment. I thought I pushed that button.
Okay, so not item 1.
Apparently not. I mean, I can speak now if it's appropriate.
If it's acceptable to the chair,
Yes, ma'am.
please proceed. Begin by by stating your name for the record.
Hi, and greetings to all board members. My name is Kishana Christopher. I'm a mother, an educator, and resident of South Crest, and I'm deeply concerned about the air quality in my community as well as in neighboring port communities. We are all situated in close proximity between the port, the 5 freeway, and the 805 freeway. There are pollutants hedging us in on every side. Additionally, I noticed the frequent airplane flight paths right outside my front door. But there's one more threat to our air quality. It is the constant helicopter traffic. Helicopters hover over South Crest and neighboring communities many times at all hours during the AM and PM hours. I'm able to see helicopters coming from near downtown San Diego, but I have no idea who's responsible for this. Helicopters hover for such long durations, it feels like harassment or war. It also feels like an environmental injustice. There are no medical emergencies or legal emergencies during the times they hover. Sometimes I record this with my cell phone and post it on Twitter. Sometimes I just document. Sometimes I taste toxic fumes in my mouth after the helicopters hover. Sometimes I observe the helicopters are not all the same color and may not be from the same agency. I'm asking this board to take notice of this and to take action to stop this daily and nightly environmental injustice. My question, who is responsible for this constant, non-essential helicopter traffic? Why does it occur daily and nightly for extended periods of time? How is the board covering toxins that spew from the air by helicopters? I'm willing to work with everyone to come to a resolution. In short, I feel deeply harassed and at risk. I feel my family's at risk and my whole neighborhood is because of the overwhelming amount of helicopter traffic and toxic waste in the air. I am an ally for clean air and peace. And I just want to also state that when I notice the helicopters around the schools, even some that I've worked at, we call into police departments and ask, is there an emergency? They say no, but these helicopters hover over children, over our schools, and we feel there's a threat happening. There's no threat, but we don't understand why the helicopters are there. So please, can you please take action and notice of this? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Chair, the speaker that lost connection earlier is back on the line. Would you like to have them speak again?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Caller number 8312. 8312, please begin by stating your name for the record. Please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin by stating your name for the record. Thank you. We can hear you now. No, it looks like you muted yourself again. *6.
Can you hear me all right now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that was 3 attempts to unmute. This is Michelle Frigo. Thank you for giving me another chance after being cut off. So I'm going to pick up where I think we left off. As you know, Interim Director Ryder and Deputy Director Garza will be retiring this summer. Finding the right replacements for these critical roles will define the future of APCD and set the tone and vision for the future of our critical work. We think the district workforce and the community would be best served by a process where the public can weigh in on the criteria for the selection and hear about the values and priorities of potential candidates. We are asking the board to prioritize a new executive management team who will respect all APCD staff, who will commit to an inclusive and ethical workplace culture, who will promote internal and external organizational communication, who will advocate for equitable pay and accurate job descriptions, who will respect labor laws and honor labor contracts in letter and in spirit, and who will continue to develop environmental justice for all residents of San Diego County. Thank you for listening. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. That concludes public testimony under non-agenda public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next is the interim report from, the report from Robert Ryder, our interim APCO.
Chair Vargas, I do
Yes,
have
sir.
some updates and announcements for you. The first update pertains to the district's solicitation for hearing board members. As you might recall, we've been soliciting applications for 2 seats on the hearing board, specifically for the public member seat and the medical professional member seat. I wanted to let you know that we've just expanded the solicitation to also recruit for an attorney member as well, because the existing attorney member's term is set to expire this July. So accordingly, the application deadline for the 3 seats, public member, medical professional member, and attorney member, has been extended to July 6th. So more information, including the application form, is available on the district's website. The second update pertains to the Port of San Diego's draft maritime clean air strategy. At your board's last meeting, Chair Vargas mentioned she would be inviting the port to give a presentation to the APCD board on the port's proposed clean air strategy. I wanted you to know that the port has accepted the invitation and will present to this board at your July meeting. I should also mention that the commissioners have extended the adoption timeline for their clean air strategy. So when the port comes to present to the APCD board this July, it'll be a revised air quality strategy that has not yet been adopted by the port. So they'll still be accepting feedback at that time. So they'll be presenting this July during a second public review period on the document, on their document. Then lastly, on a personal note, this year marks my 29th year with the APCD, which is very hard for me to believe. I've been so fortunate. But I've decided to retire. There's a time for all seasons, and my time to retire, I sense, is coming after 29 great years. So last week, I sent each of the board members notification of my pending retirement this July. I've been coordinating with Chair Vargas as I was thinking about retirement, and then after my announcement, and she recently asked me to consider staying until early August, which I'm pleased to do. And that concludes my report, and I'll be pleased to address any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder, and thank you for your service to our communities for such a long time. I want to, I don't think there are any speakers on this item. Madam Clerk, I just want to verify before I ask our committee members if they have any questions.
That is correct. We did not receive any requests to speak for the interim report.
Are there any members that have questions or comments regarding this item, the report? Okay, seeing none, well, we're going to go ahead. And if you have any comments, I would just ask, because there's so many people on the Zoom, just make sure that you click on the little hand so I can see you, and that's the best, easiest way for me to be able to find you. Otherwise, you get lost in this process. So I appreciate you. Hopefully soon we're going to be in person. Yes, my Vice Chair Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank Mr. Ryder so much for his so many years of service, and thank you for extending your stay with us. So I just really personally really appreciate it, that all that you've done, and I really wish you well. But there's still plenty of time to work together and observe what information you have in your head, for me anyway. So thank you very much.
Been my pleasure. Thank you for acknowledging me, and what a privilege. What a privilege. 29 years, exciting years.
Wow.
And they went quickly, surprisingly. I will, if I may just say, for those that are looking for career advice, maybe in the audience, whatever I lacked in perhaps understanding, I tried to make up for in hard work. So I'm proof positive that hard work pays off. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room or the most experienced, but if you outwork, you can always outwork everybody in the room. And that's been my crutch. That's what I've leaned on, is hard work. But I've learned so much from the board members, current and past, from my colleagues, that I could not have done it. I would not have survived 29 years unless I loved doing what I do. But there does come a time when it's, like I said, there's a season for everything. So thank you so much. I look forward to the next 2 months and the transition, and I'll do what I can to make it as smooth as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Gomez?
Thank you, Chair. And I also just wanted to express my gratitude to Mr. Ryder for the work that you've done over 29 years, but also for doing the heavy lift on helping us transition to this new board during a time of transition with them internally. So I know that was a lot. I just really wanted to acknowledge that. And thank you for extending your retirement a bit longer. I know that I'm very appreciative of that. So thank you.
Thank you. It's the least I can do. It's my pleasure. Thank you, Board Member Gomez.
Chair Fletcher? Member Fletcher?
Rob, Rob, wishing you all the best. I value and appreciate public service and people that dedicate their life to helping others, and APCD does that. I also appreciate in the last few years, I remember, I got here and was like, hey, I want to docket this proceeding to do this thing, and we're going to do it better. And you're like, wow, no board members ever said they want to do that. We don't know how to do that. We don't know how we do that. And, you helped us figure it out. And then obviously navigating the transition into an entirely new entity. And so appreciate all that, and wishing you all the very best.
I think you're on mute.
Just wanted to thank the Supervisor Fletcher. Thank you so much. You and everyone on the board are tremendous leaders, and it's probably the reason I've lasted as long as I have. I might have started thinking about retirement a few years ago, but the tremendous leadership on the board, coupled with the colleagues, maybe say, stick it out. And for you, Supervisor Fletcher specifically, I really admire your leadership and your service on the Air Resources Board and your creativity and your drive. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Member Medina?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to echo my colleagues and really thank Mr. Ryder for all his work in helping me to get up to speed on this new board. And I do have evidence of his hard work. At 11 o'clock at night, I have received a very thorough response to a technical question that I expected to get the next day or 2 days later, but Rob really works all those hours. So I do appreciate that, and for making the management team available for some of my questions. So thank you again, and appreciate your service.
Thank you, Board Member Medina. Appreciate your expertise. You've been a breath of fresh air on the board. You bring a lot to the table, and we're excited to work under your leadership. Thank you.
And thank you for all the work members that made comments, Mr. Ryder. I mean, I've only worked with you for a short amount of time, but it has been wonderful to work with you and your team, and I know you're going to be missed. I really want to say thank you. I mean, it was the hardest call to make, to ask somebody, I know you want to retire, but can you wait one more month? And so he was really gracious and said, that he would do it. So, it's important because of the process. And so him and I have been having conversations about the process. And so he had, before you all got the email, him and I had chatted about the fact that he was going to be moving on. And so I want to make sure that I say thank you for that. And so one of the things that we'll be doing, one of the next items that we're going to be addressing is our governance committee today. And one of the recommendations after looking at our human resources and some other background is that committee is going to be one of the first items that they're going to be looking at is initiating the process for the executive search. So we're going to be talking about that in a minute, but I wanted to make sure all of you know that together, Mr. Ryder and I are working on a transition plan and what that's going to look like, and we're going to bring it to the board at the next board meeting after the budget because of the way our meetings are, so that we are we want to make sure that this is a process that's transparent, that it's a national search, that it's a process where we get the best person for the job that really understands the vision of the board and also the intent of what this committee is supposed to be doing, which is really working on behalf of our communities. And so it's going to be another one of those really a working group board committee. And so with that, I just want to go ahead and move on to our agenda items. Item number 1, our first item is a continuation of the May 7th, 2021 cost recovery item. This is a presentation and recommendation of the Cost Recovery Task Force, consisting of board members Shu, Gomez, and Medina on the new cost recovery scenario. The task force was directed to work with APCD staff and Matrix Consulting Group to identify the best scenario and return to the board with recommendations for adoption. And so I want to make sure that we, before we turn it over to the presentation, are there any members? Why don't we go ahead and do the presentation and then we turn it over to the members of the public? Why don't we do that? So I'll turn it over for the presentation.
Thank you. Before we do that, I would like to invite members of the public that have requested to speak on this item to please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Vargas. Madam Clerk, can you please put the PowerPoint presentation on the screen? Good afternoon, Chair Vargas and board members. My name is Israel Garza, Deputy Director of Support Services. On May 7th, 2021, the Air Pollution Control District Governing Board formed a cost recovery task force. The task force was directed to work with district staff and Matrix Consulting Group to identify a preferred cost recovery scenario and return to the board on May 21st, 2021, with a recommendation for adoption. Let me introduce you to Jaya, our Chief of Support Services. John will go over the cost recovery task force presentation and the recommended scenario 6. And after he concludes this part, I will go over the recommended timeline B and the requested actions. Next slide, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Vargas and board members. On behalf of the task force consisting of board members Gomez, Medina, and Shu, I will be presenting their recommended scenario 6. Next slide, please. The task force focused on 4 main areas: cost recovery background information review, full cost recovery achievement as soon as feasible, fiscal year 2021-22 revenue and cost recovery projected impacts, fiscal year 2021-22 revenue and cost recovery monitoring to help inform future policy decisions. Next slide, please. The task force requested district staff and Matrix Consulting Group to develop modifications to scenario 4, which was presented on May 7th, 2021, whereby both permit application fees and permit renewal fees would increase by 15%. Based on the analysis, a new scenario 6 was developed to accommodate the task force request. As you can see on this slide, scenario 6 applies a 15% aggregate cap increase to applications, renewals, source testing, time and materials, and processing fees, and applies a 25% increase for asbestos and hearing board fees. This will increase the district's overall cost revenue recovery percentage from the current 66% to 78%. Next slide, please. If approved, this request will result in additional revenues up to $1.4 million per fiscal year, or an 18% overall increase, and would reduce annual revenue deficits from 3.9 million to 2.6 million. Next slide, please. The task force recommends scenario 6, which results in annual revenue impact of 1.4 million which is approximately 20,000 more than the previous scenario 4. Full cost recovery is achievable between 2 to 5 years, and most fee categories can achieve 100% full cost recovery in 2 to 3 years. I will now hand this over to Israel to go over the recommended timeline B for implementation.
Next slide, please. The task force requested district staff to propose an accelerated timeline for implementation of the fee amendments. Accordingly,
Is there any chance that you can like lower your volume a little because it's really bad? Try it again.
Am I speaking too loud?
Yeah, it's really loud. It's like hard to understand you. You want to
How's
try it
that?
again? So, but we'll try it.
The task force requested district staff to propose an accelerated timeline for implementation of the fee amendments. Accordingly, 2 additional timeline options have been developed and analyzed, B and C, besides timeline A that was previously submitted. Timeline B is recommended as it would accelerate the new fees effective date by 1 month compared to timeline A. Although a public workshop is not required, timeline B would allow additional time for public outreach and engagement via a workshop. Timeline C would reduce an additional month for implementation compared to timeline B. However, it won't allow for additional public workshop besides the 2 hearings. Next slide, please. Here is the proposed timeline B, including the budget and cost recovery milestones, which was previously posted on the governing board website. Next slide, please. APCD is requesting the following actions. Next slide, please. She's just going through all the months. It has to go through the months. Next slide, please, to requested actions. Thank you. APCD is requesting the following actions. Find that this item exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15273. Second, direct the interim air pollution control officer to implement a regulatory process which includes industry and community partners to amend rules 40 and 42, consistent with scenario 6 as recommended by the Cost Recovery Task Force and described in the Cost Recovery Task Force presentation. And third, direct the interim APCO to schedule the regulatory process consistent with proposed timeline B. This concludes our presentation on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, if there's no public comments on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have one request to speak on agenda item 1.
Okay.
I will call the speaker by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You will hear a notification at that time that your call has been unmuted. Please press *6 to unmute your phone. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. Please self-regulate your time and conclude your comments at the end of those 3 minutes. I would remind the speaker to please mute your live stream before you begin speaking. The caller is 0805. Please begin by stating your name for the record, and remember you have 3 minutes to address the board.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This is Diane Takborian of the Environmental Health Coalition. Before I comment on this particular item, I just wanted to add my appreciation to Director Ryder and for all of his hard work for so many years, but especially during the last, year and a half in the transition due to AB 423. He and his team have really applied themselves and done a heroic job to get us to where we are today. So thank you so very, very much. We really appreciate it. So I also want to thank the board for the opportunity to comment on this item, the fee recovery item, again today. Thanks to the task force members, Gomez, Medina, and Shu, and to the staff and consultants for coming together to prepare a proposal that complies with the rules, applies the fee increases in a manner that maximizes revenue, is equitable, and reduces the time to achieve full cost recovery to 3 to 5 years. Environmental Health Coalition supports the staff recommendation of scenario 6. In regards to the timeline, sooner is obviously better, but EHC is also cognizant of the enormous workload of the APCD staff and the capacity issues as we continue to navigate the pandemic transition. We trust that the board will select the timeline that is most appropriate in light of the holistic view of the district's responsibilities. Lastly, as I expressed at the last meeting, EHC is heartened to see that the district is taking this action to correct this longstanding injustice, and congratulate your new board for acting so quickly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes public comment for this item.
Thank you. Are there any member comments? Vice Chair Sanchez.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I had a chance to review some of the information with staff previously, and I want to thank the members of the board for their work in getting this together, and meeting over 2 days, in fact. So I wholeheartedly move approval of staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member comments? Is there a second to her motion?
I'll go ahead and I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Chair, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just wanted to thank staff and our consultant for working with us to try to bring a better proposal to the board, which I think that's what we ended up doing. There was another scenario that would get us more resources, but one of the calculations that came to this proposal was stated by a member of the public as well as by the presentation. We were trying to also be mindful of the heavy impacts that would be by increasing more of these fees, which we could have done. So I really want to make sure that that is stressed, that we chose not to go that route. This is a balanced proposal that is getting us closer to where we need to get to. And I just really want to acknowledge the work that staff, along with the consultant, did. We trust us. We were asking all the questions, well, what if we did this? And what if we did this other thing? So I do believe this is the best proposal. And we were also hoping to, we did ask staff to look at speeding up the process, which I'm happy that they came up with another timeline. We wanted to ensure that we were moving as quickly as possible. So because of that, that's the reflection of this proposal. So thank you.
Member Burkbeck, did you have any comments?
I just wanted to second the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. The first motion was Vice Chair Sanchez, and the second was Member Gomez. And so if there's no other further discussion, I'll turn it over to the clerk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Member Burkbeck Garcia.
Yes.
Member Bush.
Yes.
Member Elo Rivera.
Yes.
Member Fletcher.
Sure, aye.
Member Gomez.
Yes.
Member Martinez.
Yes.
Member Medina.
Yes.
Member Shu.
Yes.
Member Whitburn.
Yes.
Vice Chair Sanchez.
Such aye.
Chair Vargas.
Vargas, aye.
Thank you. That motion passes with all board members being present and voting aye.
Well, again, thank you to everyone who put so much work and time on this. We really, really appreciate that. All right. The next item is item number 2, which is the status of the draft community emissions reduction plan for the Portside community. This presentation is by Mr. Domingo Vigil, who is leading the district effort with our AB 617 community emission reduction plan. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over.
Thank you, Chair Vargas.
I'm sorry, before Domingo begins, is it okay if I give instructions to members of the public for calling in?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'd also like to note that we have received requests from the public for Spanish interpretation during public testimony on this item. So after I provide the instructions in English, I'll ask the interpreter to also provide them in Spanish. Those members of the public that wish to address this item and wish to provide public testimony on this item, please dial in to the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you when you submitted your request to speak form. Maricela, you can go ahead now.
Muy bien. Buenas tardes a los miembros del público. El punto número 2, que es de lo que vamos a hablar enseguida, después de la presentación, requiere que las personas que solicitaron hacer sus comentarios públicos llamen siguiendo las instrucciones que se les proveyeron cuando pidieron hablar, y luego la señorita secretaria se va a dirigir a ustedes de cómo pueden ya acceder y abrir sus micrófonos para que presenten sus comentarios. Gracias.
Thank you.
So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Vigil for the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Vargas. I will start my presentation as soon as it's up on the screen. Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Domingo Vigil, Deputy Director with the San Diego County Air Pollution Control District. This presentation is to provide a status update on the Portside Community Emissions Reduction Plan, or CERP, as part of our Community Air Protection Program. This program has given us the opportunity to collaborate like never before. And through the CERP, we are establishing partnerships to take a comprehensive approach to address air pollution at the community scale. This presentation will cover background information, community selection, community and stakeholder engagement, timeline and CERP development process, content of the CERP, and next steps. Next slide, please. Over the past decades, air quality in the region has improved significantly. However, certain communities continue to experience environmental and health inequities from air pollution. To help address these inequities, Assembly Bill 617 was signed into law in July of 2017. The bill established the Community Air Protection Program and requires new community-focused and community-driven actions that go beyond existing state and regional programs to reduce air pollution and improve public health in communities that experience disproportionate burdens from exposure to air pollution. The Community Air Protection Program requires community air monitoring, community emission reduction plans, and incentive funding to deploy clean technologies in the most impacted areas. Next slide, please. The Portside community, which includes Sherman Heights, Logan Heights, Barrio Logan, and West National City, was selected because it experiences higher levels of pollution burden and vulnerability than most communities in California, according to the state's Community Environmental Health Screening Tool, CalEnvirScreen 3.0. CalEnvirScreen is a science-based mapping tool developed by the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment and the California Environmental Protection Agency that helps identify California communities that are most affected by sources of pollution and that are often especially vulnerable to pollution's effects. CalEnvirScreen uses environmental, health, and socioeconomic information to produce a numerical score for each census tract in the state. The criteria used by this screening tool includes level of diesel pollution, rates of emergency room visits for asthma symptoms, and levels of poverty, among others. This slide shows the Portside community has high CalEnvirScreen ratings. This community includes 50,000 residents and a concentration of 12 census tracts with high CalEnvirScreen scores. Next slide, please. Since 2018, the APCD convened a diverse multi-sector steering committee to discuss community air concerns and potential solutions with affected parties. The Community Steering Committee supports active community involvement and collaboration in the development of the Community Emissions Reduction Plan, and it includes residents and community leaders, representatives from public entities such as SANDAC, the City of San Diego, National City, and Port of San Diego, business groups such as the Industrial Environmental Association, and community-based organizations such as the Environmental Health Coalition. To promote community engagement, steering committee meetings are held monthly and are open to the public. Meetings have been conducted virtually since April of 2020 to comply with COVID-19 health orders. Additionally, subcommittees were formed and met on a more frequent schedule to develop the CERP and formulate the strategies and actions that I will cover later in this presentation. Next slide, please. This slide shows the Community Emissions Reduction Plan timeline. The Portside community was nominated for this program by APCD and was selected by the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, to participate in December of 2019. Since then, APCD has been working with CARB and the Community Steering Committee to develop the CERP. Last November, the Air Pollution Control Board approved Phase 1 of the CERP, which included a set of early actions that are currently being implemented. After November of last year, APCD staff continued working with the Community Steering Committee to finalize Phase 2, which is our current stage to complete the plan following CARB's blueprint under AB 617. A final proposed SERP will be presented to the APCD board for approval in July. Upon approval from the APCD board, the last step of this timeline is presenting the finalized SERP to the California Air Resources Board for approval. Throughout this process, APCD has worked to engage the community through regular community meetings, workshops, as well as email, printed, and social media outreach. Next slide, please. The SERP is organized in 7 chapters, providing information on the following areas required by the state's blueprint for the Community Air Protection Program. Chapter 1 describes the portside community and why and how it was selected. Chapter 2 describes the process to establish and convene the Portside Community Steering Committee and stakeholder and public involvement to develop the SERP. Chapter 3 contains a detailed discussion of community-level emissions and their sources. Chapter 4 provides data based on APCD's regional air monitoring stations, and additional data is currently being captured in the community to continue informing air quality status and progress. Chapter 5 describes the program elements used by APCD to enforce local air pollution control regulations. Chapter 6 provides CARB's review of 3 years of stationary and mobile source enforcement data to assess local air quality issues within the portside community. And finally, Chapter 7 contains actions and strategies, and the proposed SERP actions in this chapter define a path to further reduce air pollution from sources in the community. This chapter also includes overall goals for the SERP. Next slide, please. This table, which continues on the next slide, provides a list of the main agencies with an implementing role in the SERP. Next slide, please. The SERP calls for individual efforts of these agencies or collaboration among them to implement the actions in the SERP. Next slide. The SERP includes aspirational goals intended to guide the community members, businesses, and organizations and government agencies partnering in the implementation of this plan to support health and environmental justice in the portside community. The overall goals identify the direction in which the community wants to go to achieve emission reductions beyond regulatory requirements. Next slide, please. As shown earlier as part of the timeline, Phase 1 was approved by the APCD board in November of 2020, and it included actions under the categories you see on the slide. Phase 1 also received unanimous support by the Portside Community Steering Committee. Some early successes from Phase 1 include, under our outreach and community engagement, an Office of Environmental Justice was established within APCD, starting with 2 full-time positions dedicated to this effort. A framework is currently being developed for this office, and we will thread across agencies, including the County of San Diego's recently established Office of Environmental and Climate Justice, to support environmental justice work in the region. Under our incentive strategies, we have funded projects in the portside community, which include cleaner school buses and an electric tugboat. We are also developing an incentive program to provide air filtration systems to households within the portside community. Phase 1 also included early commitments from other entities, such as the Port of San Diego, the shipyards, and the Navy. As part of these commitments, the port has deployed a total of 5 zero-emission trucks in 2 marine terminals within the portside community, and is currently working on achieving additional emission reductions from replacing older cargo handling equipment and from a number of additional projects. The shipyards have implemented policies requiring air compressors to be powered by zero-emission technology or Tier 4 engines. And the Navy is operating in-port ships on shore power to the fullest extent practical when ported at the base. These early commitments and results reflect the collaborative approach of SERP partners and reflect the value of community input in informing air quality priorities in the portside community. APCD staff will continue to work with these entities to track the completion of additional projects and commitments included in the SERP. Next slide, please. Phase 2 of the SERP includes actions under the categories you see on the slide that will be presented to this board at a later date for approval. These actions have been the main area of focus and refinement since Phase 1 was approved last November, and have been developed by steering committee members, including members of the community. In the following slides, I will go over each of these categories. Next slide, please. To reduce truck emissions and exposure to those emissions in the portside communities, actions under the heavy-duty trucks category support electric trucks and charging infrastructure, support dedicated truck routes in the community to minimize exposure to at-risk populations, provide for the needs of truck drivers and businesses that rely on them, ensure fair outcomes for truck drivers regarding incentives, and promote enforcement of mobile source air quality rules. Next slide, please. Actions under the land use category provide for reduced exposure through improved community planning, transportation planning, including active transportation, development of additional community green space, indoor air filtration, enforcement of truck regulations, as well as further study of health inequities in the community. Some of these actions call for the development and adoption of community plan documents, which provide commercial land uses and zoning that serve as a buffer between sensitive receptors and sources of toxic air contaminants, as well as additional green space in the communities. Next slide, please. Actions under the working waterfront activities focus on reducing emissions associated with activities from the Port of San Diego, shipyards, and the US Navy. These entities made early commitments in Phase 1 of the SERP and have already had some accomplishments as shared earlier. Additional actions include reducing emissions from cargo handling equipment, commercial hovercraft, ship repair activities, employee transportation, and promoting early adoption of zero-emission technologies. Next slide, please. Some measures require a commitment by an agency that cannot be made until after a public process. For example, adoption of land use and transportation planning documents. The only action the APCD and steering committee can take is to support an outcome that will improve air quality in portside, all disadvantaged communities, or the region. For this reason, we have included advocacy measures that support emission reduction opportunities in all of the different categories discussed in the SERP. Advocacy will be a key strategy to implement the SERP, because this is how the community can engage with policymakers to support projects that align with the goals and actions proposed in the SERP. Advocacy work will also be the main way the community can continue to engage in decision-making processes beyond the 5-year implementation timeline of the SERP. Next slide, please. The draft SERP was available for public comment from April 19 to May 7. During that time, 2 public workshops were held on April 27 and 28. The main themes of comments received are overall support for the SERP, further alignment of some actions with the port's maritime clean air strategy, requests for clarifications of some actions and terms, requests for modifications to placement and presentation of information, requests to consider incorporating additional emission reduction rules, and recommendations related to SERP goals. Staff will evaluate comments received and will work with stakeholders to address comments in accordance to community priorities. Next slide, please. Next steps are to finalize the SERP considering input received, present the SERP to the board for approval in July, submit the SERP to CARB for approval by the state, which is tentatively scheduled for October, and start full implementation with annual progress reports. APCD will continue collaborating with CARB, community members, local jurisdictions, and regional agencies to expand the community air protection program and develop SERPs for additional communities. APCD staff would like to acknowledge the work and dedication of community members, partner agencies, and CARB staff towards the development of the SERP. This level of collaboration is unprecedented, and we look forward to continue collaborating throughout the 5-year implementation phase of the SERP and beyond. Next slide, please. Thank you for your time. This concludes today's update.
Thank you so much. Are there any comments from the public again? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair Vargas. We have 6 members of the public currently in the queue that wish to address the board under public communication for this item.
Fantastic. And then I think, Madam Clerk, can we just share what we're going to try to do with the Spanish translation? I know that we are going to make sure that for the next meeting that there is simultaneous translation. Something happened with the technology and we weren't able to do that today. So what we'll do is we'll translate any of the Spanish speakers, we'll translate them today directly, but in the future, we'll make sure that it's simultaneous so that we're not having to go back and forth. But anything else, Madam Clerk, that I missed?
No, that is correct. And I believe our interpreter is attempting to do simultaneous translation now. I'm hoping that it's going to work. But in the event that it doesn't, then we will follow as you said, just as you said.
Y a las personas que van a hablar en español, muchísimas gracias por su paciencia. Vamos a hacer todo lo posible para que pueda hacer la traducción simultánea, pero si no se puede, vamos después de que den su presentación, vamos a interpretar en inglés, ¿ok? Así que I'll turn it over to you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. I will be calling the public speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You will hear a notification that your call has been unmuted. Please press *6 to unmute your phone. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the audio record. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. Please self-regulate your time and conclude your comments when your time has ended. I would also like to remind the speakers to please mute your live stream before you begin speaking.
Buenas tardes. Vamos a llamar a los participantes por los últimos 4 dígitos de su número de teléfono. Escuchará una notificación de que su teléfono ha sido liberado para que hable. En ese momento, pulse la estrella y 6 para activar el sonido de su teléfono. Se pedirá a cada participante que diga su nombre y apellido para la grabación de audio. Dispondrán de 3 minutos para dirigirse al consejo. Les rogamos que autorregulen su tiempo y al concluir sus comentarios, cuando su tiempo haya terminado, van también a poder recordar que durante esta pausa pueden hablar, por favor, de forma pausada porque no funcionó el sistema simultáneo y por lo tanto la intérprete se encargará de ir interpretando consecutivamente. Adelante.
Thank you. Our first caller is 3381.
La primera llamada es 3381.
Please unmute yourself at this time. You will have 3 minutes to address the board, and please begin by stating your name for the record.
En este momento puede abrir su micrófono, va a tener 3 minutos para hablar y por favor diríjase a la junta directiva empezando con su nombre y su apellido.
Good afternoon. My name is Maricela Garcia, and I have been a resident of Logan Heights my whole life. I am currently a promotora for the Environmental Health Coalition and have been a member of the AB 617 steering committee since last December. Growing up, I realized that our community really lacked the proper representation to ensure our health by the problems my family endured. My grandfather passed away from lung cancer when I was young, and my mother has had to undergo a couple of surgeries in relation to her breathing problems. And I knew that my family was not the only one suffering from this reality, and I wanted to find a way to really change that narrative. After my first community action team meeting I was a part of, I was certain that this was the place to make that happen. The support I received during that meeting empowered me to continue to get involved, and that is when I joined the steering committee. Since my involvement, I have truly felt like I am helping make a difference in my community, and it makes me so proud. I'm greatly thankful for the inclusion of the health and heavy-duty zero-emission transition goals in the SERP, because these are the issues that really directly affect me and my neighbors. Not only does the SERP bring me hope for real change in our community, but I'm truly optimistic that it will also be a motivational template for other organizations. For example, the Port to present a stronger MCAS. I really thank you for your time, and I look forward to all the positive changes in our community. Have a great day.
Thank you. Our next caller is 3381. 3381.
La siguiente llamada es de el número con los últimos 4 dígitos 3381. 3381.
Please unmute your line by pressing *6. You will have 3 minutes to address the board.
Por favor, abra su micrófono de su línea telefónica oprimiendo la estrella 6 y tendrá 3 minutos para dirigirse al consejo.
I'm sorry. That was my phone number, Maricela Garcia, who just made the comment.
Thank you. We'll move on
Thank
to,
you.
thanks. We'll move on to caller 3656. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. Please unmute your line by pressing *6 and please state your name for the record.
El siguiente número es el número 3656. 3656, por favor, abra su línea telefónica oprimiendo la estrella 6 y va a tener 3 minutos para dirigirse a la junta directiva.
Ok, ¿se escucha?
Yes, can you hear me? Le escuchamos.
Bien, mi nombre es Montserrat Hernández.
My name is
Y
Montserrat Hernández.
Y quiero dar testimonio acerca del SERP.
And I wish to give my testimony regarding SERP.
Yo soy parte del comité de AD617 desde el 2020 y también soy parte del subcomité de uso de suelo.
I am part of the committee on AB 617 since 2020, and I'm also a member of the subcommittee on the land use.
Así también vivo en Logan Heights, así que soy parte de la comunidad portuaria.
I also live in Logan Heights, so I am part of the port community.
Como parte de una comunidad que ha sido por muchos años impactada por la contaminación, he tenido la oportunidad de ser parte del desarrollo del SERP.
Because I have lived in the community that has been impacted by the contamination for a very long time, I have also been serving on the SERP board.
Y he abogado por las comunidades más vulnerables como Barrio Logan y National City.
And so I have advocated for the communities that live in Barrio Logan and National City,
las cuales tienen un alto índice de personas con asma y otro tipo de enfermedades respiratorias.
which have a high rate of asthma and other respiratory illnesses.
Y ya es tiempo de mejorar los impactos acumulativos en estas comunidades.
And it is now time to improve the impact, the cumulative impact of the respiratory issues in this community.
El SERP ayudaría a mejorar estos impactos.
SERP would help to improve the impact,
ya que hay planes para reducir los índices de contaminación.
since there are plans in place to reduce the levels of contamination or pollution.
Por ejemplo, mediante el cambio de camiones de diésel a camiones cero emisiones.
For instance, through the switching of the vehicles from diesel fuel to zero emission.
Muchas de estas ideas vienen de los residentes que participamos en el comité y en los diferentes subcomités.
And many of these ideas come from the residents themselves that are participants in the committees and subcommittees.
Así como también otras agencias que están siendo parte del comité, como el puerto y SANDAC.
As well as other agencies that are part of the committee, like the port and SANDAC.
Queremos seguir siendo parte de este proceso y que podamos seguir teniendo voz y voto.
We wish to continue part of this process and for our voices and votes to be heard.
Gracias por su atención.
Thank you for your attention.
Madam Clerk?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Our next caller is 3734. I would ask that you press *6 at this time to unmute yourself. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
La siguiente llamada es el número 3734-3734. Por favor, abra su línea telefónica para que pueda hablar oprimiendo la estrella 6. Va a tener 3 minutos para dirigirse a la junta. Empiece con su nombre y apellido.
Buenas tardes, ¿sí me escuchan?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me now? Sí.
Ok, buenas tardes. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Alicia Sánchez.
Good afternoon. My name is Alicia Sanchez.
Soy residente de National City.
I am a resident of National City.
También soy promotora de AHC.
And I'm also one of the promoters for AH6, AB6, pardon the interpreter.
No, de AHC. Y soy del comité AB617 y del subcomité de uso de suelo.
That was EHC, and I'm also a member of the subcommittee AB617 and also the committee on the land use.
Yo estoy aquí participando porque quiero un cambio.
I am here today participating because I want a change.
Entre los autobuses de gas a que sean eléctricos.
The gas buses should become electric buses.
Por eso yo apoyo a hacer que ya no haya tanta contaminación.
And that's the reason why I support SERP, so that there's not so much pollution as we have.
Ya que mi esposo padece de problemas de salud como cáncer y problemas de respiración.
My husband suffers from cancer and respiratory illnesses.
Y en mi comunidad hay muchos niños con asma. Por eso es importante
And in my own community, there are many children with asthma. That's why I consider it important
que la mesa directiva sepa que puede contar con los residentes.
For the board to know that you can count on the residents.
Para que juntos hacer buenos cambios y mejorar el ambiente.
So that together we can make positive changes and improve our environment.
Y tener una mejor calidad de vida. Gracias por su atención.
And thus we can have a better quality of life. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4686. I would ask that you please press *6 at this time to unmute yourself. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Gracias. La siguiente llamada es el número 4686-4686. Por favor, abra su línea telefónica oprimiendo la estrella 6. Tendrá 3 minutos para dirigirse a la junta y por favor empiece dándonos su nombre y su apellido para los registros.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Good afternoon. My name is Naomi Sanchez and I am 19 years old. I am a resident raised here in Barrio Logan, a medical assistant, a promotora for Barrio Logan with the Environmental Health Coalition, and an entrepreneur. I have been a part of the community action team since the beginning of 2020. Being a part of this team opened up my eyes to the severity of the pollution situation that we live here in Barrio. I want to start off by thanking you for being such an amazing board, listening to my community, and for the inclusion of the health and heavy-duty zero emission transition goals in the SERP. Growing up here has taken a health toll on all of my family members and I. My little sister developed breathing problems shortly after we moved to Barrio Logan that will now be a part of her life forever. My dad worked as a truck driver for many years, moving around containers using crane diesel equipment at the 10th Avenue Marine Terminal, which cost him all of the health issues he has to learn to live with now because he had no other option. Nobody deserves to live and work in a highly contaminated area, but unfortunately my dad had to in order to provide for our family and him. We want all the diesel crates to be electric, as well as all of the trucks that pass by my neighborhood, not only to reduce the already high pollution levels in my community, but for a better quality of living for future generations to come. I'm happy and hopeful to see the changes that will that with the help of the SERP will bring change to my community in the near future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next caller is our next caller is 9448. I would ask that you unmute yourself at this time by pressing *6. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. I'd ask that you begin by stating your name for the record.
Gracias. La siguiente llamada es el número 9448. Va a abrir su línea telefónica oprimiendo la estrella 6. Tiene 3 minutos para dirigirse a la mesa directiva. Le pedimos que empiece con su nombre y su apellido.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I am Joy Williams. I represent Environmental Health Coalition on the AB 617 Steering Committee. EHC has participated with AB 617 from the beginning. We submitted a nomination for Portside to be selected for AB 617. We supported APCD's nomination of San Isidro as well, and we continue to hope this community will be selected in the future. We have participated on the steering committee for its entire existence, and I'd like to take this opportunity to express our appreciation and thanks to APCD staff and all the community members for all their efforts on AB 617. EHC supports the draft SERP that you will be voting on this summer. We may make recommendations to strengthen the plan in places, but we are in favor of moving forward to adopt it. If implemented effectively, the SERP has the potential to directly reduce emissions of harmful pollutants such as diesel exhaust, as well as to move the region faster towards electrification of diesel equipment and away from carbon-based fuels. Planning efforts to mitigate impacts of pollution and increase the environmental health of the portside communities are included in measures strongly supported by community residents, such as more green space, air filters for schools, greater tree canopy, routing of truck traffic around the community, and grade separation of streets from train tracks. The public process that produced the SERP followed recommended practices for EJ communities. The majority of the steering committee members are from portside communities. There was translation at all the meetings. The meetings were held at night, and they were held in the community until the lockdown. There was good representation and active participation of stakeholders on the subcommittees. Community resident members of the steering committee are now receiving stipends to compensate them for their time in meetings. EHC proposed overall goals for the SERP to provide a set of metrics that express the community's vision for healthful air quality and successful implementation of the SERP. The goals are included in the draft SERP, and although they do not have regulatory force, they provide a means of measuring planned progress against desired outcomes. The SERP includes commitments to actions to be taken by APCD, the Port District, the cities of San Diego and National City, Sandag, Caltrans, the shipyards, EHC, the Navy, and CARB. The effectiveness of the SERP relies on all agencies following through with their commitments and allocating sufficient resources. The steering committee will continue to meet and track the implementation of the SERP. Many of the actions and strategies will have positive effects on air quality in other communities in the region that also have high levels of air pollution and are communities of concern, notably the San Isidro area and West El Cajon. Finally, the SERP includes a section of advocacy measures, which can include APCD support for a strong advanced clean fleets rule in Sacramento, a strong RTP at Sandag, and similar measures that would have the effect of reducing traffic pollution throughout the region. So in sum, EHC supports the SERP, and we urge you to adopt it when it comes before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That does conclude public comment on this item.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. As a reminder, thank you first to all of the public members of the public for their comments. As a reminder, there is no action required for today's item, but I do want to turn it over to comments from the board. But before I do, les quiero dar nomás gracias a todas las personas que participaron en este proceso por toda su ayuda, por todo el trabajo. Los estamos oyendo claramente y queremos invitarlos a que sigan participando. Vamos a hacer todo lo posible porque estas juntas sean traducidas simultáneamente para que tengan información que ustedes
Madam Chair, I apologize. We have one caller that is requesting to speak.
Okay, almost done.
Okay, sorry.
The public that doesn't speak English understands that we are really grateful for them for sharing, and that we're going to make sure that simultaneous translation is available for them in the future. Their participation is key for us as we're moving forward now more than ever. So that was it. That's all I said in Spanish, translated into English. Now we're good. So one more person, and then I want to turn it over to the members of the board. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Caller 7315. I'd ask that you please press *6 to unmute yourself at this time. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Yes, good afternoon. For the record, my name is Sylvia Calzada. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Good afternoon to all governing board members. I would like to congratulate each one of you for being selected under the AB 423. I'm very excited to see familiar faces and looking forward to collaborating with you. As previously mentioned, my name is Sylvia Calzada, a longtime constituent of the County of San Diego, living and serving for more than 25 years in the city of National City. As a patient with asthma and a resident leader from Paradise Creek Apartments, west side of National City, I decided to advocate for a better tomorrow and the improvement of our air quality. When I found out the National City ranked high in air pollution, my journey shifted to a unique and encouraging opportunity of empowerment when I officially became an active member of the AB 617 Community Steering Committee and participated in various subcommittees supporting a first-of-its-kind effort in the development of the Community Emissions Reduction Plan. Throughout my participation, two important elements which stood out were the inclusiveness and collaboration in the atmosphere. For me, delivering my voice on issues of discussion and acknowledging them created trust and confidence in the process. Also, providing guidance and setting the example within the group, fostering these essential factors has been transformative. The effectiveness and professional leadership from chairs promoting active communication and creative thinking to the creation of a Portside charter to the meeting agreements created. Also creating the subcommittees to the Office of Environmental Justice, first of its kind here locally. And most of all, providing efficient interpretation translation services to our Spanish speaker members of the AB 617 and the public. The translated documentation is an incredible achievement in my book. Although we did have a few challenges, the organization embraced a culture of inclusiveness and collaboration where members and the public thrived, committed to working together and achieving greatness in the completion of this project. As a concerned citizen, I joined to serve as a reinforcement and representation for the needs of our people in our city. Today, I respectfully request your unconditional support in the implementation of the SERP. Thank you for your time and attention. And once again, thank you for not skipping me. Appreciate that.
Thank you. That concludes public testimony for this item.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, again, for all the colors. Member Gomez and then Member Martinez for members of the committee.
Thank you, Chair. And primero quiero nomás también expresar mi gratitud a la comunidad por siempre estar presente, peleando por una comunidad más saludable, y me dio mucho gusto oír unas voces que yo he trabajado con ustedes. Me dio los gustos, pero también me da tristeza, porque eso fue hace mucho tiempo y aquí estamos todavía peleando por una mejor comunidad. Pero gracias por ese sentimiento de que sí tienen el derecho de tener una comunidad saludable. Just really wanted to take a minute to thank the community for continuing to fight for a healthier community, and it made me really happy to hear some of the voices that I worked with when I was a community organizer, but at the same time, it made me a bit sad because that time, me being a community organizer was a long time ago. And the fact that
10 plus years, here we are still with the same issues. But I really want to actually acknowledge the resiliency of really demanding for a healthy community. And I know that there's a lot of commitment from this board to ensure that we get there. I really want to thank staff for really bringing forward a draft document that is reflective of the community. You know, traditionally, government plans for the community, not with the community. And this right here is a reflection of that, of really trying to shift things differently. So I really wanted to acknowledge that, and I'm happy to see that shift that we're committing to, but more importantly, trying to do things that will resolve the quality of the air in these communities. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez. Member Martinez?
Thank you, Chair. And I also echo the sentiments of Member Gomez, and I'm just so appreciative to get this update and the slides in Spanish, that it's bilingual. As someone has worked in the community for a long time, and sometimes often myself is put in that role of translator interpreter, it is not easy. It takes a long time. So I just want to commend staff for putting in the work and getting this done. You have been getting a lot asked of you, and I appreciate just you catching up and just trying to incorporate all of the asks of this new board as we are in this transition. And I even learned some new words reading the slides, so thank you. I will definitely keep that readily available. So when I have to serve in that role myself sometimes, you know, it is important that our communities, especially our communities who are most impacted, get this information and are at the table, right, when we're discussing these issues, because they are the experts. They are the ones. Just the testimony alone, it just shows, you know. So anyways, I'm just so appreciative of that, and I wish, you know, even in my own city, I'm trying to do something similar, and it's been very hard. So sometimes it just takes a very long time, but I just want to thank the community members who spoke today and shared their testimony. And I'm just looking forward to continue serving on this board, and I'm glad that we're being more inclusive and providing the information in Spanish as well, and maybe eventually we'll also be able to expand that to additional languages. So thank you so much.
Member Burbeck? Thank you, Member Martinez.
I also want to echo the other members that have spoken. Thank you to the staff for listening to us and providing the information, not just in 2 languages, but in a way that is understandable, that I'm not trying to translate things in my own head, both in English and in Spanish. I was able to understand the slides in both languages, and I really do appreciate that. As someone who grew up in South San Diego, whose family still lives in these portside areas that are in these higher air pollution tracks, and as someone who suffers from asthma and works with children who are dealing with these respiratory diseases, I am happy with the commitment of the community who is speaking up, and estoy agradecida. I'm very thankful to everyone who was willing to get on the phone. It is not an easy task, so thank you.
Thank you, Member Burbeck Garcia, and Member Medina.
Thank you, Chair. I would also like to echo my colleagues' comments, but also having looked at the SERP very carefully, I'm very impressed by the deep understanding of the community about these technical issues. And it is a plan that is based on sound science, that has innovative solutions, and that provides measurable goals that can be quantified. And to me, it speaks about the importance and the value of having community participation in these efforts. Solo quisiera comentar que estoy muy bien impresionado con el trabajo que han hecho. Está basado en la ciencia. Son soluciones, un entendimiento del problema muy profundo, con soluciones muy innovadoras y que demuestran la importancia de que la comunidad participe en estas decisiones, en estos planes técnicos. Muchas gracias.
Gracias a usted. All right, seeing no more comments from members. I know this is, I just love this, that we are having, this is 2020 and we're having a binational conversation in a binational region, right? So important for who we are and who we represent. So I wanted to say thank you to all of our members, and I don't know, this makes me really happy. All right, so next to item 3 is the establishment of the San Diego County Air Pollution Control District Governance Committee. And this is a really, we had this discussion at our last meeting. We wanted to make sure we put this item on the agenda. And really this is an opportunity for us to, because we are technically a new entity, there's a lot of work that was done by our, in the bylaws and by the committee before, but as we're moving forward as a board, governance is such an important piece of ensuring that we have everything we need to be able to move forward and be the best committee that we can be, the best board that we can be to meet the overall mission of the organization. And so with that, let me go ahead and ask if there are any members of the public that wish to speak on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are no members of the public that have requested to speak on this item this afternoon.
Are there any members of the board yes, Member Hilo Rivera and then Member Gomez.
Thank you, Chair Vargas. I just wanted to say, first, apologies for not being able to make it last time. The budget called, but I was really excited to see this on the agenda and would very much like to participate in this if the opportunity is there.
Thank you. Member Gomez and then Member Chu. You're on mute, Member Gomez.
Yes, the everlasting Chu. Just wanted to thank you, Chair Vargas, for bringing this forward. And I too would like to express my interest in being part of this. And it's going to be up to you and who you nominate. But I think this is very important as we're trying to do more in addressing these issues. I think it's going to require more time to really dive deep and ensure that we're doing it also along with the community. So I'm ready to serve in that capacity as well. If you wish, I do so. And if there is some need for a motion, I'll be happy to make the motion.
All right, I'll accept your motion, and then thank you for that. And then I'm going to turn it over. Member Hilo Rivera, did you have any more comments, or is your hand just up? Okay.
No more comments. I'll lower my hand. Sorry.
Member, I think it was Member Chu, and then Medina, right?
Great. Thank you, Chair Vargas. Since Member Gomez had made a motion, I'll go ahead and second for the record. And I just wanted to point out, the task force that was formed to deal with fee changes, fee recovery, showed how effective I think members of our group can work together, smaller group, to get something done quickly that's amenable to the entire board. So I really appreciate having this being done now when governance is so important, that I think we can be more effective. And if you need another person, I'll certainly volunteer if that's necessary, but you have a great board, so you won't have any shortages, I don't think.
Thank you. Member Medina and then Vice Chair Sanchez.
I believe Vice Chair Sanchez's hand was before mine, but.
Oh, okay, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for placing this on the agenda. I think it's a phenomenal idea. And especially since North County has not really been part of this kind of process. I've been left out of most of the processes, and I really look forward to having representation on this committee from North County, and I'd certainly be happy to serve on this. But definitely, this is a great opportunity to really kind of fast track and ensure that we get to the priorities. And obviously, we just heard about priorities in the South, in San Diego, and also I understand the San Ysidro is being considered as well, but North County really needs attention as well. So thank you very much. And I would like to be considered for this too. Thank you.
Member Medina.
Thank you, Chair. and I would also like to be considered, although I know you have a lot of worthy people, and I would be glad to just take their lead if so happens. I would just like to add that as the air pollution specialist part of the board, that I could make a contribution, but I will make it inside the governance or outside the governance group. Thank
All
you.
right, so if it's okay with you, thank you for those comments. What I'm going to go ahead and do is let me go back and we'll work on this as I think there is a limit to the number of people that could be part of the committee because we can't have quorum. So that could be a total of 5, including myself. So that means I can only appoint 4 more people. So let me get back to you. We'll work together to figure this out. I think representation is extremely important and it matters. And so we'll come back to all of you, but we have a motion and a second, and then why don't we go ahead and see if there's any members of the public that have any comments on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've received no requests from the public for item number 3.
Okay, all right, seeing none, can you go ahead and call the vote, please?
Thank you. Member Birkbeck Garcia?
Yes.
Member Bush?
Yes.
Member Illo Rivera?
Yes.
Member Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
Member Gomez?
Yes.
Member Martinez?
Yes.
Member Medina?
Aye.
Member Shu?
Aye.
Member Whitburn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Sanchez?
Sanchez, aye.
Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Thank you. That motion passes with all board members being present and voting aye.
All right, fantastic. So I will be following up with all of you and put together a schedule so we can have a meeting, and then we'll do our first item of business will be identifying the next steps for the executive search of our next executive. So lots of great work ahead of us. Our final item is a resolution brought forward by Board Member Shu. Before I turn it to Board Member Shu to present this item, are there any members of the public? I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Member Shu so he can talk about it, and then we're going to go ahead and turn it over to the public. I think I need to figure out and make sure that we have the presentations before we get people to speak, because that kind of doesn't make sense. So Member Shu, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then I'm going to have the Madam Clerk give the public an opportunity to speak. All right, Member Shu.
Thank you, Chair Vargas. First, I want to thank Paula Forbes and Rob for working on this resolution. It came up at the last minute. They worked late hours, which unfortunately is too often for them, to make sure that this resolution got on the agenda and that it fit the needs of the legal needs as well as the procedural needs for APCD. Now, why did I introduce this resolution? Obviously, AB 743 deals with air pollution and air quality, which is something that we are charged with in the region. Even though we may be dealing with stationary sites, we are of course now considering mobile sites that are indirect, and this moves us into this direction of land use, development, and vehicle miles traveled, which is the essence of 743. This gives an opportunity for APCD to be the new APCD that deals with regional issues that are really affecting our communities. So that's why I felt that this resolution needed to be put forward. It places a new face on this, that all of us care about air pollution, and we're willing to comment and to be involved on all these issues. SB 743 really affects the communities that we are concerned with. Those Cal environmental screening communities we just heard about, that we just heard testimony from, are affected by regional pollution. And it's not fair that some parts of the county get away with polluting more or creating situations with land use that pollute our communities, our concerned communities, even more, just for the sake of actually making more money. So to me, this is an area that really affects us. And that's another reason why I think it needs to be addressed, and particularly the communities of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So to me, this gave even additional reason why we should be involved. Unfortunately, there's been arguments put forward against this legislation and how the county is being enforcing it or implementing it, that is completely false. I've been involved with SB 743 for a long time, before I even thought of getting into politics. So I have some knowledge of the legislation and its implementation. So if anyone had looked at the briefing papers that are in the litigation against the county, they would see that the county is interpreting the legislation wrong and that they need to correct that. These are pretty hard arguments. The county actually has very poor legal records when addressing these issues. They usually lose these cases in court when these environmental organizations come up with their legal arguments saying that the county has misinterpreted legislation or not implementing something correctly. So I'm pretty confident the county is simply wrong in their interpretation in terms of implementing 743. And this business that is going to hurt housing for people, poor people, for people of color, is completely wrong. If anyone really looked at these issues, they would see that those arguing against this measure never really cared about poor people, never cared about affordable housing. And they're using this ruse to fight this legislation. In fact, they're doing it so they can make more money on building homes that would be available for poor people anyway. We would need to look at the combination of transportation costs and the cost of housing. And when you do that, that really shows that putting housing far away in suburban areas is not right for the families that we care about, in addition to the issue of pollution. Finally, if any government agency, any board in this region needs to weigh in on this together with the county, it would be the APCD board, all of us. We are placed here with the express concerns of the community to deal with these pollution issues. So that's my last main reason why I put this resolution forward. We should comment on this because we care about communities. And when we deal with air pollution, we need with stationary sources, together with land use, together with transportation, together with all the causes of pollution and illness in our communities. And that's why we can weigh in on this. We need to weigh in on this. This is the area that we can get into with our partners, with the county, with cities, with all the other regulatory agencies to say, let's work together to clean our communities from any kind of pollution that's taking place. And land use is definitely one of those areas. And frankly, 743 especially targets this one source of major pollution. I'll just make this last point to show why it affects me in La Mesa. As urban sprawl takes place in East County, people move out there, and unfortunately, they'll have to drive through La Mesa, creating more pollution. That's the VMT we're talking about. That's the greatest source of pollution and illness in the city of La Mesa, along with El Cajon, along with Lemon Grove, along with other cities in East County, and for that matter, all of our cities suffer from that. People that are poor, people that do not have any other choices, live in these communities, and we suffer from urban sprawl and the kind of VMT that's created. That's why 743 is important to me, and I think for all of us, to set the record straight. The county needs to change and simply follow the law. So with that, I won't move this forward because I think public testimony should go after that, or precede any motion.
Thank you, Member Chu. Madam Clerk, are there any, I think there's 2 public speakers on this item, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You will hear a notification that your call has been unmuted. Please press *6 at that time to unmute your line. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the audio record. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. Please self-regulate your time, and please remember to mute your live stream before speaking. Our first caller is 8046. Please unmute yourself by pressing *6 and begin by stating your name for the record. You will have 3 minutes to address the board.
Hi, this is Noah Harris, policy advocate with Climate Action Campaign, speaking in support of this resolution today regarding the goals and implementation of SB 743 in San Diego County. We urge the Air Pollution Control District to work closely with the Board of Supervisors to ensure County SB 743 implementation will achieve the law's intent, incentivizing infill, encouraging active transportation, and slashing greenhouse gas emissions towards state climate goals. But the current method fails to achieve those objectives, which are absolutely essential to securing clean air and improving public health. Communities of concern are disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis and environmental injustices, and further delay will only mean more car pollution in the neighborhoods on the front lines of these crises. SB 743 is a key tool to achieving the equitable, sustainable communities we deserve with clean air and access to housing close to jobs and transit. However, we cannot achieve a zero carbon future without aggressively reducing vehicle miles traveled. We urge you to vote in unanimous support of Board Member Shu's resolution today, and thanks so much for the opportunity to provide comment.
Thank you. Our next caller is 5868. I would ask that you unmute yourself at this time by pressing *6. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Hi, good afternoon, Board, Chair Vargas and Board. This is Sarah Kent. I'm a resident of Chula Vista, and I live in Supervisorial County District 1 in Chair Vargas's district. And I wear many hats, but I also serve in a volunteer capacity as Programs Director for the Coastal Environmental Rights Foundation, SURF. At SURF, we recognize the intersectionality of environmental protections, such as water and air quality, with impacts impacting human health. As such, we're interested in the County of San Diego implementing policies which uphold SB 743 that fulfill its goals of improving air quality, not making it worse through ever escalating vehicular impacts and improving human health. We completely support Member Shu's resolution that's before you this afternoon. And we've long supported reducing the barriers to development of affordable housing and redevelopment in these areas along transit corridors. Land use policy has a direct impact on human health and quality of life, and every branch of government should be working collaboratively with the data we know now to make drastic changes to how San Diego County will continue to be developed. When the County Board of Supervisors most recently considered this Wednesday, Chair Fletcher, his opening remarks were really articulate and really brought home the need to make these drastic changes and how we address all of these impacts and how we deal with housing and how we move ourselves around this county for jobs and school and all, shopping, all the things that we need to do that are part of our daily lives. And reliance upon single occupancy vehicles is a huge air quality impact. The success or failure of how every municipality and governing body implements SB 743 will have a direct impact on your efficacy as the APCD. I urge each of you, especially those who serve on city councils throughout the region, to use the power we have entrusted in you to protect the community with drastic, progressive policies. We need to break with the past, as difficult as that is for some, improve housing options in the communities where people already live, and provide functional alternatives to cars to move people around. Some folks, as Board Member Shu mentioned, there are some people raising issues about housing equity. However, I would really urge the members of this board, as you continue to grapple with this, to listen to those activists in the frontline communities, such as EHC, such as CPI, Mid-City CAN, City Heights CDC, some of these orgs around the county, and especially in this South Bay region, who have been on the ground and in the weeds on this for ages and who have the expertise to make policy recommendations. I think that there are a lot of tools like this at your disposal as leaders, and you should proactively reach out to them to come to some solutions around this, because I think a lot of people are, in the end, on the same side. It's just we have to learn to do something new altogether and incentivize that for the good of our future. So please support today's resolution. Thank you all for the work you do. Thank you, staff, for getting this on the agenda and all the work that you do ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comments on this item.
I now will turn it over to member comments. Member Shu. I want to turn over to Member Shu because I think he's making a motion, and then Member Bush. Go ahead. You are muted, sir.
Thank you. I just wanted to move this motion for the board to approve this resolution. And I also want to thank all the comments that have been made. Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any comments from the members of the board? Okay, Member Gomez and then Vice Chair Sanchez.
I think Vice Chair Sanchez was before me.
Okay, sorry. You know what? I just blink in a second.
Sorry.
And your little hand is next to something kind of red and I can't see it sometimes. So I apologize.
And Chair, I wanted to speak to, but we can go with
okay, go ahead. Speak, Member Bush.
Okay, yeah, so I'm happy to second the motion. I want to thank Member Shu for being so proactive, working with staff and putting this resolution together. Really want to give a special shout out to legal counsel too for working those late hours. And you know, I'm in support of our voicing our support as a body for SB 743 implementation that meets state standards, that ultimately reduces VMT at the County of San Diego and really all of our jurisdictions and all of our different agencies. And like right now for the moment at the county, especially the unincorporated areas, that is where we're seeing the majority of many of the proposed sprawl projects, Lilac Hills Ranch, you know, Miriam Mountains, there's so many other projects that those ultimately increase VMT. And, you know, at the end of the day, our mission is to protect the residents and the environment of all of San Diego County from the harmful effects of air pollution. And the biggest source of our region's air pollution, it's not the stationary sources, it's the mobile sources, the cars, the trucks, the vehicle, you know, vehicle miles traveled. That's 42% of the pollutants. So when we look at ozone formation and all those emissions from the tailpipes, that's causing that. In 2019, just for put a number here, the county's stationary sources, which we have the direct regulatory authority over, produce 4 tons per day of pollutants. But mobile sources, so cars, trucks, and buses, contributed 80 tons daily. So that's, you know, put that in perspective, that's 20 times more pollution from stationary sources or from mobile sources than stationary sources. And the state came down on us as a body for not doing enough to address mobile sources, mobile emissions in the audit last year. So, you know, if we as a board, as an agency, are really truly going to, I think, fulfill our mission and protect people from air pollution, then it's addressing the stationary sources isn't enough. We have to address the mobile sources. We also have to take as proactive stances, I think, as we can. And you know, this is different. This resolution, this is different than what we've done in the past. It's new. It's bold, but you know, one of the you know, Sarah Kent, like, I appreciate what her comments on what she said, and Member Shu, you know, we can't continue with the status quo, and I think we can't continue as different agencies to operate in silos. We have to work together. We have to collaborate with each other, and not just for the county, but really everyone. So the Air Resource Board, the Port, Airport Department, Navy, SANDAG, MTS. So this is definitely about collaboration and balancing, obviously, staff capacity and needs. So with that, again, appreciate this resolution, and I urge my colleagues to support it. Thank you.
Vice Chair, thank you, Member Bush. Vice Chair Sanchez.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I wanted to also thank Member Shu for bringing this forward. There are so many negative impacts to urban sprawl, but certainly one of the highest does have to do with health, air quality, greenhouse gas, and also, if I can add, wildfires and placing people at risk. The smoke inhalation is such another really high risk that we put our residents into. And so I think this is very, very critical to the mission of this commission, and I wholeheartedly support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Gomez and then Member Whitburn. Oh, no, Member Gomez, Chair Fletcher, and Member Whitburn.
Thank you, and thank you, Member Shu, for bringing this forward, something that I truly do strongly support. One thing that I do have a question. So my thinking is more on the process-wise. I know that this agency has a lot of work to do on taking care of our current responsibilities and making sure that we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, with the notion that we would eventually start engaging in other processes that lead to air pollution, such as this discussion that we're having today. But here we are, sooner rather than later. We still do have a lot of work to do on ensuring that we're taking care of our current responsibilities. So I know that we're working diligently on making sure that we do that. But one question that I do have is on the resolution at the end where you make reference to, therefore, the number 2, what is the intention? Like, are we now going to be identifying a staff that does system housing? Because I know that that's not something that we do. And I know that this conversation is about where we place housing, the type of housing, making sure that people travel less, or that the way that they travel is either by doing or utilizing other forms of mobility that will harm our air quality and our ozone less. I get that. But I just wonder what we were thinking when you placed that in the resolution, because I'm trying to be, I'm very pragmatic at times, and I want to make sure that we are engaging from the purview that we are able to, and not just adding an additional layer that will extend the responsibilities of our staff that might not be even ready to engage in such things.
Chair Vargas, if I can answer that, I'm available, or I can wait till later.
Let me go ahead and have everybody speak, and then we'll go ahead and have you respond. Is that okay? Chair Fletcher?
Thank you. Thank you. And I think look, 743 is a transformative piece of legislation in terms of fundamentally changing our entire approach to land use and moving away from levels of service and doing VMT. And if it is done right and correctly, it will actually lower the cost of building housing, because there will be no associated mitigation in VMT efficient areas. And so it also is possible that if we can design regional mitigation banks or programs, that for those areas that do have to do some VMT mitigation, it can actually go into funding the creation of new VMT efficient areas. And so we can get in a process here where we can actually move in a good direction. Now, it does present a unique challenge for unincorporated areas, right? For incorporated jurisdictions, adopting a regional average means you have a higher number in most cases than what the VMT averages are for your jurisdiction. And that's a good thing, right? That's by design, right? It is designed to incentivize construction in certain areas, those connected via transportation corridors with lower VMTs. And this notion of the challenge of we have to build more housing and we have to simultaneously lower our greenhouse gas emissions and the corresponding air pollution that comes from those is an impossible standard to meet under the old structure, under the old land use structures. And that is why for the last 10 years, we have continued to see VMTs go up despite having these greenhouse gas emissions, because the land use has not aligned with that. And so I think 743 is a good step. I think some other components that are going to be essential to be able to achieve this is going to be easier funding of transportation projects. If it forever remains a 2/3 vote to get additional funding to build new transit lines, you are going to be hard pressed to make the investment in transit you need to create the VMT efficient areas that our housing demand needs. And if the notion of duplexes is going to remain so exponentially scary to local governments that they will not cite them in VMT efficient areas, then we're going to lose all of the benefits of what we do. And so this alone is a transformative change, but it's going to take some other pieces to bring it together. And as a county, we have a lot of work to do. The initial analysis on the cost of mitigation was not based in a world that I've ever lived in. It was extraordinarily high. And I don't believe it takes into account the opportunities that are afforded to us. I think we need additional clarity around affordability You know, right now, 100% affordable housing projects are exempt from this, but the reality is there are very few of those that are 100% affordable. We have a few going in my district, a few at MTS, working to figure out what is the mix of AMI and other types of things that we can work in here. Better understanding how frequently the VMT efficient zones will be updated. Understanding this chicken and egg dilemma that if I run a rapid bus line to an area, is that going to count as a VMT efficient area? Because it appears that it doesn't count unless there's already ridership, but there can't be any ridership until there's an actual housing. So how do we do that? If I say we're going to add a rapid bus lane between here and here that might create an area, well, is that a VMT efficient area? That would incentivize the construction. But if it can't be a VMT efficient area without the movement of people, you're never going to get there. And so we've got some work. And so as a board, we've had, I think, 12 or 13 things that we need to explore and better understand as we consider this process moving forward. But I know we fully support the intention and aim of aligning our land use to build housing and the need to lower VMTs and lower GHGs. We also understand the nature of congestion and that not every one vehicle mile traveled in congestion is not this. It is the same from a VMT standpoint as one vehicle mile traveled not in congestion. From an air quality standpoint and GHG standpoint, they're not anywhere the same. And so we're working as a county to work through that in a thoughtful process so that we can get to something that works. And I appreciate Supervisor Vargas, Chair Vargas, for her work on this when we put on our little supervisor hats. And then our ongoing commitment to air quality here. And so we ask everyone to please, work through these with us, because if we get this right, it can be an incredibly good thing. If we get this wrong, then we're not going to get the impacts we want and the backlash will be severe. And so it is very important that we do this and we do this in a responsible way.
Member Whitburn. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Vargas. And I do think it is really important that the board work with Chair Vargas and Chair Fletcher and with what they're doing at the county as they evaluate this. I do want to say that well, number one, I very much appreciate your work, Mr. Hsu, on this resolution and that of the staff as well. I do struggle with some of the terms in the resolution where it refers to red herring housing equity arguments and disingenuous arguments. I say that because there are, I'm sure, folks who make those arguments in an inauthentic way that could be characterized as red herrings and disingenuous, but there are people who make those arguments in regard to this and are sincere in their belief, whether we agree with it or not. And so I would struggle to support putting my name on a resolution that characterizes their views in that fashion. But apart from that, that's the only point I wanted to make on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Whitburn. Member Elo Rivera.
Thank you, Chair Vargas. I just wanted to appreciate Member Hsu's work on this. I know that he's been fighting to protect people and the environment for longer than I've been at it, for sure, and probably many of us combined. And that, I mean that in all due respect, Member Hsu. And I also appreciate Member Bush, your work on this as well. I'll just say that from my perspective, one of the things that I've been advocating for at the city is good governance and faithful compliance with the efforts of the state. And there's a lot of examples from past administrations all over our region where not taking state or county requirements seriously ends up costing us far more in the long run. I know that that's not exactly what's going on here, but nonetheless, I think in order for me to be consistent with that effort to make sure we are faithfully executing good well-intentioned efforts by the state, which in this case would be the faithful implementation of SBS 743, while maybe messy and confusing in the short term. I think it's important for us to do so. And so I'm supporting this resolution and appreciate the efforts to put it forward.
Member Whitburn, do you have any other comments? Because your hand is still up.
Oh, sorry, I'll lower my hand.
All right, okay, so we have a motion and a second, and I think I lost you. Member Shu? There you are. Did you like to respond to Member Gomez's question?
Sure. Well, first of all, yes, I want to first acknowledge all the comments I've just heard are well taken. I appreciate all the comments from the other board members. Of course, this resolution was written before Wednesday, so I didn't know the county that Supervisor Fletcher takes such copious notes and wrote down 13 different items that the county staff is going to be working towards, and all the issues that were brought up by Member Vargas. So I really do appreciate the process is moving forward, and I think a lot more is going to be coming. But I want to make one quick comment on the cost of mitigation. Mitigation is bad. Mitigation happens, and you have to do a lot of mitigation when you do poor planning and do things wrong. So maybe the mitigation is very high because we're doing so much damage, and better planning is necessary so we do less mitigation. I think that's my comment with regards to high cost of the mitigation, and perhaps the calculation is wrong as well. But let's do better planning, not more mitigation. And let's deal with housing for poor, the Black, Indigenous, and people of color with some systematic data and information, with knowledge about housing discrimination in the past. And that's why I was fairly strong in my whereas dealing with red herring type of arguments, because I needed to make it very clear that, at least for me, I'm not going to put up, frankly, I'm just, as a person of color, very offended when someone starts using these arguments, recalling history incorrectly, and really putting down something that's really put forward to help people of color, but flipping that around as if it's going to hurt us. So to me, that's why I put in that term. When I hear offensive language from other elected officials, I'm going to put in some language that's a bit strong to fight back. So that's why I put in that language. Lastly, therefore, the number 2. The reason why I put that in there is simply to say that we, as a air pollution control board district, do care about housing. We don't deal with land use issues, of course, but it's not as if we don't care about housing for the poor, housing for Black and Indigenous and people of color. And obviously, we're not going to be dealing with that directly, but we can be supportive of that. And we're not going to, of course, do something that's going to hurt that kind of housing development. Implementing 743 is not going to hurt people of color. It's going to help people of color. And I think it will also be helpful in providing better housing for people of color and those who are in need. So that's why I set that in there. And lastly, in terms of staff time, other than working on this resolution and perhaps how staff comments on issues in the future in the comment letter, it might affect that. But obviously, implementation of 743 is the county's and city's issue. APCD is really not going to be involved with that very much. So I don't think we'll have very much more staff work on this unless it's making a comment here and there. There's no technical work for implementation of SB 743 that this resolution asks staff to do.
Any other member comments before we take a vote? Seeing none, I will go ahead and turn it over to our Madam Clerk for roll call.
Thank you. Member Burkbeck Garcia?
Yes.
Member Bush?
Yes.
Member Ilo Rivera?
Yes.
Member Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
Member Gomez?
Yes.
Member Martinez?
Yes.
Member Medina?
Aye.
Member Shu?
Aye.
Member Whitburn?
Noting my concern about some of the language, I do support the substance, so I will vote yes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Sanchez?
Sanchez, aye.
Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Thank you. That motion passes with all board members being present and voting aye.
Thank you, Member Shu. with that, that was our last item, and it concludes our business for today. I want to just say thank you, everybody, for all of your engagement in this process. I think we're doing a lot of really great work. Our next meeting is on June 4th, 2021. If there's any specific items that you're interested in making sure that are on the agenda, feel free to reach out to myself, and we will make sure that we move forward. And then I will be following up on the governance committee as well, so we can start our process for executive search. Again, thank you to Mr. Ryder and the whole team of the APCD for all of the work. And we will make sure we figure out the translation situation for the next meeting. Buenas tardes, and I hope you want to have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.